Mora conducts physician-led support groups, helping people live healthier, happier lives, free from chronic diseases like diabetes, hypertension, and obesity. And on our podcast, Health and Mora with Dr. Lori Marbus, we bring to you nutrition and lifestyle medicine experts and extraordinary guests to empower and inspire you with their knowledge and stories of plant-based lifestyle so that you can be your healthiest self.
Welcome to the podcast. I'm Dr. Lori Marbus, and today it's quite an honor to have the president of the ACLM, Dr. Beth Frates. How are you today?
Thank you so much for having me, Lori. I am doing really well today.
Thank you. And I'm excited to really dive into your expertise, which is in regards to the education and the kind of the new generation of physicians that are coming and your academic training. But before we get there, tell me a little bit about why you wanted to become a doctor and why did you kind of hone in on lifestyle medicine?
Yes. So this is a personal story, and it goes way, way back, actually, because I always thought I was going to be a business person, which is interesting because I know that you've done a beautiful job connecting the business of lifestyle medicine and the practice of lifestyle medicine, and now the spreading through the podcast. So in me is an entrepreneur. It hasn't had its day yet, but in me is an entrepreneur. My dad's dad started a financial advising company, accounting, and then my dad and his brothers took it over, and I would be the third generation to take it over. And that was always the plan. I'm the youngest of all Pegs. That's my maiden name. And all my cousins were delighted that I loved math and delighted that I was a bookworm and delighted that I wanted to work hard and take it over. They didn't mind at all. And they thought this is terrific. Little Bit, which was my nickname instead of Elizabeth. Now I'm called Beth, but they all called me Little Bit. I was never big, but I was the youngest of all of the cousins. That's probably where it came from. Anyway, Little Bit's going to take it over. And so sure enough, I go to college and I'm so excited to be an economics major and fulfill my dream of being the president of this company. And then I went to the bookstore at Harvard. It's called the Coop. Some of you may be familiar with it, in Cambridge. And I went and got my economics books for Ec 10. And I was so excited, want to share it with my dad. Back then, we're talking about 1986 right now. So back then, we didn't have cell phones. In fact, my dorm phone wasn't even working for some reason. So, so I went out of the Coop. I can see myself doing this right now. And I went straight to the payphone. Some of your listeners will remember payphones.
Yes.
Right. I made the call to New York, where my parents live. And I called to express my excitement about these economics books. And I called and said hello. And my mom said, "Your father loves you very much." Sure. Yeah, Mom, I know that one. So I just want to talk to Dad about my books. Dad has had a heart attack and stroke. He is in the hospital. I've been trying to get you. He is paralyzed on the left side. And I said, okay. And my brother was at Boston University at the time. Somehow I was able to call his dorm and he was there. Remember those days you had to call and connect or leave a message on the answering machine. So we did connect and we drove as quickly as we could to White Plains Hospital where he was, my dad. And this was a life-altering event, of course, for him because he was paralyzed on his left side at the age of 52. And for me and for the family, it was a life-changing event. And at that time, I became fascinated with the human body. I always liked biology, but this was different. This was a fascination with how did this happen? Why did this happen? And more importantly, how do we prevent this from happening again to dear old Dad? And of course, others, but I was focused on dear old Dad at the age of 18. And I will share that we had a primary care that we all went to. He was family physician, Dr. Moses, and he came in while we were there, and he saw us all just, none of us knew what to do. I believe we were crying. We were certainly stunned in the room. And he said, can we all meet? You know, your dad's going to need some rest. And he took us out to a meeting area and room, a private room where we spoke, the three of us, with Dr. Moses. And I'll never forget it. He was amazing and really wonderful, explaining what happened, and whatever I could grasp, I did. But what was most important was that he helped me grasp that I had something I could do to help, because we were all so hopeless, helpless at the moment. And I don't remember the tasks he gave my mom or my brother, but he went around and said, you all can help and have a job. But I do know my job was to help my dad with the ball. He had a ball that he was going to need to squeeze, and he was going to need to get better with this therapy ball. And so I thought, okay, this is my thing. I'm going to be on the therapy ball. And so through a lot of hard work and a year of physical therapy, occupational therapy, Dad did make a full recovery, except for, and I know you know this, a fine motor movement of that hand. Now I could say that's my fault because I was in charge of the ball, but I know better because I know the stats. So he did really well, and he lived a beautiful 27 years after that heart attack and stroke. And we felt every year was a gift that we had with him.
Mm.
So that is actually why I decided to change from economics to biology and psychology, concentrating in college.
Mm. So did you make that immediately, or were you like next semester, or you're like, nope, this is it?
Yeah, great question. It was not immediate. It was immediate that my focus and my interest became the heart
Mm.
and the brain and risk factors, because honestly, I love my dad. He now has passed away. I loved my dad so much through all of this. There was a time he was very, very unhealthy.
Mm.
He only ate fast food. He spent most of his days and nights in the office. He would go in at 6, come home at 11. There may be days I didn't see him. I was living at home, but he worked really, really hard with his brothers, and he wanted to keep up the business, and he felt like his work was helping people get mortgages and pay for their kids' colleges. And he felt really, really dedicated to the clients. So he wasn't sleeping well. He was not exercising. I love him. He was a little stressed. Some of the reactions to things that were minor were perhaps a little exaggerated or angrier than they needed to be. I don't want to judge, but he seemed to me as a teenage daughter to be very stressed.
Mm.
And so basically that's 5 of our pillars. Exercise, none of it. Nutrition, fast food, potato chips, cakes, cookies, ice cream, all through the night. So that sleep was maybe 12 to 5, but disrupted. His bedroom was, you had to go past my bedroom to get to the kitchen. It was a small home. I could hear him. I slept lightly. I would hear him at 2 go to the kitchen. I would hear the clanging of the dishes and the ice cream or whatever he may be consuming at the time.
Mm.
So I was well aware of it. And as I mentioned, the stress. Now, social connection. Yes, he had 2 kids who loved and adored him, a wife who loved and adored him. But there wasn't really connection in a deep, deep level. And he certainly wasn't sharing himself with his friends, just the brothers and the clients. He wasn't he had lots of friends. He grew up in Scarsdale, New York. He lived in there his whole life and had many, many friends, but he wasn't connecting with them on any level at this time. So in terms of that sixth pillar, as we know, is avoidance of risky substances. He didn't smoke or drink for this, but he was overweight. He had high blood pressure. He didn't have diabetes, but he was riddled with disease. He hadn't seen Dr. Moses. Oh, I don't know. I can't say, but for years and years, until this heart attack and stroke. So he went to Pritikin and watched this, right? So I wondered, what's my dad? He's very bright, very academic. And he looked it up and he thought, how do I recover fully and prevent this? So he found Pritikin centers back in, this must have been 87. And he and my mom, they had the wherewithal to find it, right? It was hard to find it, but if you found it, great. And then you needed the finances to fly there, to stay there, to pay for it. So he was lucky in that he had those things. And he and mom learned how to eat healthy, about exercise. He started a routine exercise. He actually chose the stationary bicycle. He was on that 1/2 hour, 5 days a week. He learned about stress reduction. And he really took these things home and took them seriously and followed them religiously for the rest of his life. So I was still economics, watching him go through this. And it wasn't until that summer where he was probably, 8, 9 months, 10 months into it and really recovering, that I would now be going into my sophomore year of college, that I said, I think this is something I want to try. But mind you, I didn't take chemistry. I didn't take physics. I took math and AB calculus, and I love numbers. Yeah, I took biology, but I wasn't interested in the sciences. I was going to be a businesswoman. So I had to go back as a sophomore and take these pre-med courses that a lot of my friends at that time took in their freshman year, because they were gung-ho, knew what they wanted to do. And by the way, they all had taken AP chemistry and AP physics before, and I didn't know it. So it seemed very challenging. And I have to be honest, I wasn't sure I was up for this challenge. I wanted to try, but I remember talking to one of my dear friends saying, who was pre-med, saying, but I mean, you're just so smart. I mean, you, and I remember him saying specifically, like, wait a minute, you're smart too, go for it. And he said, anyway, just try it. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. So I signed up for these classes before changing major officially, right? Signed up and did chemistry. I have to say it wasn't very easy. I worked hard in my chemistry and my physics to learn it. And then it came, right? Then I got into it. And so I really declared at the end of sophomore year, Dad had fully recovered, made this complete lifestyle change, was a different person. He was the same person, but he was more balanced, much less stressed, felt comfortable, it seemed, day to day, as before it just felt like he had dis-ease. I'm like, uneasiness because of the riddled disease he was carrying, but it was all very uncomfortable. He became much more jovial. My mom would say, this is how he was when I met him. This is how your dad was when I met him. And he would give her a peck on the cheek from behind, and they had this just beautiful, loving relationship. And interestingly, he started drinking 1 glass of wine, and he's that type A. And so he really hit in his world back in the 80s. Remember this, you're a family physician. I mean, they were recommending, the cardiologist told Dad, for your health, have a glass of wine. So he did do that. As we know now, especially January 2023 with the Lancet journal saying no amount of alcohol is safe if you're worried about cancer. But now even the American Heart Association, if you don't drink, don't start. So Dad wouldn't have started if this happened to him in this era. It was really that process of watching him go through, me dabbling in that, right? Trying the chemistry, seeing that I could do it, trying the physics, seeing I could do it, and then becoming a candy striper. Do you remember
I
candy?
was a candy striper, yes, as well in high school at a local hospital. Did you have the little apron with the little star?
So for the young people listening, they may not know what I'm talking about, but you had, we may have had a jacket, Lori. I'm not sure.
I had an apron. It was like a overall apron thing.
An
And
apron.
it was like, you look like a cooking apron. Yeah, you just put it over you and it had the stripes and the little pockets and went around. And my favorite was actually rocking the babies. I go into the nursery and I love children and just snuggled and loved. And there was some babies that I was in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and they were babies that had been born to mothers that were drug addicts and stuff, and that touch and that was just so important for their recovery. So that was my favorite. I was like, sign me up anytime. but yes, you tell me about your candy striping. I love it.
No, that's so great. That was a little different experience. So I was at Mass General being a candy striper with some other pre-meds and friends. We would go together on the T, get ourselves to Mass General, and then put our stripe. So ours were pink and white and pink and white.
Mm-hmm.
And we actually, I mostly transported patients or specimens, actually. That's what I remember but it was that experience that helped me see what the hospital was about. But it wasn't enough because there's no doctors in my family. So I'm thinking I'm going to change careers entirely when my whole family's entrepreneurial. I better really know what this is. So what did it for me, Lori, was, as I told you, I got very interested in these different risk factors and the stress. You may have noticed when I talked about it with my dad, I just had this feeling that stress was a major factor for him. So I started looking at the literature and I saw New England Journal of Medicine, Rosansky's article. I remember it so clearly because I printed it out. And this was, I think, the end of my sophomore year now. And he had just published the article and it showed mental stress impacts the heart. And they tested via EKG and thallium scan. So they looked at wall motion abnormalities, ejection fraction, as well as ST segment depression and other. The mental stress in these cardiac patients produced the same abnormalities as their physical stress, their exercise stress when they went in to be evaluated. And I thought, this is incredible. So I printed it out. And it was summer. I didn't have a job. I needed a job. I was a waitress, but I also wanted a different job. So I went to the local hospital, it was New York Medical Center, Valhalla, New York Medical Center in Valhalla, not far from where I was from. And I literally just drove up there, went to the lobby, the information booth. I had the article. And I just said, this is a very interesting article. And I am thinking about being pre-med, and do you know a cardiologist I could talk to? Because I'd like to replicate this study and really try to understand more about. And so fortunately, imagine back then, like whatever it was, it must have been 1988 or something. The nice woman actually led me up the stairs to Dr. Michael K, cardiologist. They're a premier cardiologist there. I did tell her my dad had a heart attack and stroke. I think she felt sad for me. I'm not sure. But she was very
doesn't
nice.
matter. You got there.
and I'm sitting in Michael K's office, no appointment. I'm just sitting, waiting, looking at my article. I really hope I get this. And then he has an opening. I'm in his office like that day. And I explain myself. I mean, just imagine a pre-med coming to your office like this. But so he too, I start with the dad and he thought this was very, very interesting. The best part is he said, wait, Rosansky? Wait, let me see that. And he looked at the article and said, wait, I went to medical school with this guy. Wait, what? Alan Rosansky? I said, well, let me look. Yeah, I guess it's Alan here. Yeah, right. You're right. So he said, let's try to replicate that. Yeah, let's do it. So that became my summer project. And then my senior thesis. And I was hooked because I got to do the experiment. Well, no, I was the pre-med. So they had me be the mental stressor. That was my role. So I went in and asked people to do serial 7s, which by the way, I failed at. I almost lost my job because the very first time I was sent into the room, and they said to me, go in and tell the patient to start with 100, subtract 7, get the number, subtract 7 again, and just keep going. That's what they told me to do. So I went in the room and I said, oh, hi, I'm Beth Peg, and we're doing this experiment, and it's going to be a bit of mental stress now. So what we're going to do is we're going to take 100, and they just like grabbed me, took me out, said, you can't do mental stress like that. Mental stress, that's niceness, that's compassion and kindness. No, you have to go in there straight faced. No smile. No, don't you smile. Don't you go in there straight face. Explain. This is the medical research, and we are going to do mental stress now. That involves serial 7 subtractions. Take 100, subtract 7. Faster, faster. No, you're wrong. Faster, faster. So I learned how to do it. I want to keep my job. But I did find the same thing. And to me, absolutely fascinating that the mental stress could change the EKG like that. So I was just hooked. And then from there, I went to Stanford for medical school and got into the cells. So started to do some bench research on diet, looked at diets rich in L-arginine. So that becomes nitric oxide, as you know. So a walnut rich diet versus a saturated fat diet, and then looked at endothelial cell function. And fascinating, of course, the endothelial cells are much healthier in those that had these were animal studies back then. And so in the animals that had consumed the diet rich in walnuts and then L-arginine and nitric oxide. So I learned that and learned a lot from that. I also learned I didn't want to do that kind of research anymore. So definitely don't participate in that. But brought into my mind the power of nutrition, right? This was 1991 or 92 at this time. And I kept telling myself, there's so much here. Everything about stress, nutrition, exercise. Why am I not learning this in medical school? Mind you, I love Stanford. It was an amazing medical school, amazing education. I love my faculty, my friends. It's just a medical education issue that we were not taught back in the 90s about stress, its impact on cells, nutrition, the impact on cells, like I just described. Now we would be talking about the microbiome and many, many things, and exercise, what it does to the brain. Granted, we didn't know about BDNF back in the 90s, brain-derived neurotrophic factor increases neurogenesis, as we know. So wouldn't likely have learned about that, but didn't even learn the cellular mechanisms as to why and how exercise lowers blood pressure. So I was convinced that I wanted to do something in this field. And as you know, back then, preventive medicine wasn't about counseling. It was much more about the epidemiology. Back then, we're talking about the 90s, right? I graduated in 96. And cardiology, to me, was more about medicines and stents than it was about the counseling and the prevention. So when I found out about physiatry, physical medicine and rehab, and of course, the stroke patients are near and dear to my heart. And in rehab, in the old days, you had stays that were 3 or 4 weeks. So the physician was with the same patient for 3 or 4 weeks. And I said, this is brilliant. Here's my counseling time. Of course, I learned shortly thereafter that it was a lot of blood pressure medication and a lot of prescribing and getting tests and ordering MRIs, and it wasn't all about the coaching and counseling that I had imagined. But that is then how I got into lifestyle medicine, by writing a book about exercise, nutrition, stress, and how that could reduce stroke risk. And then one of my attendings Eddie Phillips, who was, I was a resident, he was an attending in the Department of Physical Medicine and Rehab at Harvard Medical School. He read the book. We were at a department gathering and he said, "You're doing lifestyle medicine." "That's a lifestyle medicine." I said, "Really? Well, what's that?" This is like 2007 or something. And then I learned what it was, and boom, that's it. That's my life, my career, my passion. Pulling it together, right? As you know, pulling it together into an academic endeavor. So firstly, creating lifestyle medicine interest groups, first one at Harvard in 2008, practicing that, 6 lectures, 6 pillars, bringing it to the college curriculum at Harvard through the extension school, creating an entire college curriculum on lifestyle medicine. This was just a passion. I had to do it. Pre-meds would take it. Some practicing physicians took it. This is before we had a lot of the CMEs and a lot of what ACLM can offer now. But it was just a calling, and then sharing that more broadly through ACLM, through the LM 101 curriculum. Now, anyone, if you're interested in teaching lifestyle medicine, you can go to ACLM, type in LM, Lifestyle Medicine 101 curriculum, and you can pull down 150 slides for 12 modules that all follow and mimic this book, because my dream was, or is, that people can teach it in college, in medical school, and make it easy. There's the PowerPoints. Here's the curriculum. Here you go. And not only that, you probably know this. I have kids. I know you do too. And the teen
Awesome.
Lifestyle Medicine Handbook. So we wrote that one, then we co-authored this one, all through ACLM. I get no proceeds from the sales of these books. It goes to ACLM. And then created a teen curriculum so that teenagers in high school and middle school could have the book, read the book. Either their parent can go through it, pediatrician can use it. There's also the PowerPoints. What we have done now at this time, 2023, is now we have, as you know, lifestyle medicine residency curriculum. We have residents that are learning about lifestyle medicine. And so I've asked, and the residents at Spalding, PM&R, would you like to teach this lifestyle medicine curriculum to local underserved high school areas? And the answer was yes. This year we piloted residents teaching the Charlestown High School students about nutrition, about physical activity, social connection. We piloted it, and it went really, really well.
Wow.
They enjoyed it. The residents loved being the teacher. Now, mind you, there's this thing, if you're going to teach it, you need to know it, right? So they had to feel comfortable, learn it, but the slides are all there, ready to go. So any residents can use this to teach to the community, teach to, to high school students or middle school students or community. You can use LM 101 for community. Just pick out the slides you want. Pick out the slides that are appropriate. You can use it for medical school. There's a lot of research studies in there as well. You just pick and choose what you'd like for your audience. But my goal in all this was just to share everything I know, everything I've learned since, 1988, and just make it as accessible as humanly possible. And I believe I'll just continue doing this. Someone said, "What will you be doing in 20 years?" I thought, well, updating the handbook. So.
Oh, wow. Wow. That is an amazing journey. And thank you for all your work that you're doing for the next generation. It's just so very important that as we, get into ages where maybe we're not actively practicing or teaching, that next generation picks it up the torch and continues. That's fabulous. No, I think the community piece is so intriguing. I had, when I got out I was in the Air Force as well as active duty. And when I got out, we lived in Colorado, in Western Colorado. And one of my patients we had started using lifestyle medicine and he got better. He actually ran the local food pantry. And he goes, "Could you come and teach classes at our food pantry?" And I was like, "Yes, absolutely." And the community really does love that. We actually started a community garden. And, they're talking about the foods and bringing them in. And yeah, there's so many places that people don't have access. And, that teaching people love to teach and share and be part of someone's change and improvement. That's a great, great element. Oh man.
Well, what you did sounds tremendous, getting into that food pantry and teaching.
Mhm,
I love
mhm,
that story.
mhm,
I've started doing group visits since 2012 through Spalding Lifestyle Medicine group visits, where we will review the pillars all together with stroke survivors. I did stroke survivors and caregivers, and you know why. That's how I
mm,
started in this endeavor of group visits, and helping these patients to help themselves and give them the tools. It just feels so good, doesn't it?
mhm, mhm,
and
mhm,
and being able to do, we do scholarships so that we can have anyone join us, and I think that's such an important part, and making lifestyle medicine accessible, affordable. And one of the things that I think I've done recently is well, try to get this into the lay people through this book, Paving the Path to Wellness. Again, I get no proceeds. This is all going to the nonprofit Paving Wellness. And what we're doing is trying to bring this to all different communities. And my dream is, my grandparents came from Greece, Basara, in the Peloponnese, and they were 18, and they landed in East Boston. And my dream is that I can get into East Boston and be able to do these classes with
mm,
people who are similar to my grandparents, right? They came to this country, they're just trying to make ends meet, and they are maybe not fully aware of the opportunities at perhaps food pantries, at other farmers markets, or even exercise, even the local areas that have we have beautiful arboretums. You may not be aware if you just come here, and really try to help a community that's struggling
mm,
so that they're not struggling, and give them the tools of lifestyle medicine to utilize. Because you can use this at any socioeconomic level. You can use the practices and principles of lifestyle
mm,
medicine, using frozen vegetables, frozen fruits. Of course, those are not as good, no, but they are certainly better than French fries. Uh, right? And
yes.
if you can get bulk
Mhm,
barley, bulk brown rice, bulk beans,
mhm,
and you start to cook as a community or a neighborhood, and you're starting to convene really the way they do in the Mediterranean,
mhm,
actually, then it becomes a little bit easier.
mhm. Oh, absolutely. It's really been interesting because, part of the reason I think I told you before we started is that I started the podcast is because I'm like, how did this patient do this? But then it turned into searching for answers of patients and the obstacles that were keeping them from incorporating more healthy lifestyles. And that is a really interesting point. The cost and, the bulk prices. And so I took it upon myself to make some videos on how to do this for family of four on $10 a day. And if you look at, how much is SNAP proceeds per one adult, and it spoke to that specifically, I said, the bigger investment's going to be your spices, but the bulk foods are very cheap. It's a pauper's diet for a reason. But I had a question. Do any of your resources have other languages? Because like my daughter, for instance, I told her she's at Tufts, so she's in a community hospital. And, she said, Mom, there was one day none of my patients spoke English. They're speaking Portuguese, Haitian, Spanish, a variety of languages. And so I was just curious what resources you have there for those in those communities.
Yeah, that's a great question. And we are talking to people about translating these books that I just shared with you into Portuguese.
Ah,
Now, you also may know Frates is a Portuguese name. Now, I'm not that. That's my married name, and so yes, my husband and his family have Portuguese as Frates. But I will share with you, in Boston, yes, we have a lot of different communities: Greek,
yeah.
Italian, Portuguese. And so whenever I would show up at Mass General with the name Dr. Frates, people would automatically speak to me in Portuguese. I remember feeling so awful because I couldn't communicate back, and I just really didn't have the time to learn I could learn now actually, but didn't have the time to learn. But I would always need to bring in the translator. But yeah, we have a big Portuguese community. So yes, it is in the works. Currently, they're translated into Korean. All of these books are in Korean, but we are in negotiations. It may have already been contracted. It's actually through the publisher. I don't get involved with that, but the publisher I know is communicating with a lifestyle medicine physician to translate into Portuguese. So that is in the works. I have been trying to find someone to translate the books into Spanish here in Boston. So if we can get that, that would be really powerful and helpful if I could make that dream come true. So I'm going to continue to work on that.
Wow. Okay. That's fantastic. That'll be phenomenal resource. That's so exciting. So, so let's talk to a little bit, because your academics are incredible. For those of us, like, for example, I've been invited to do grand rounds at my medical school, Texas Tech in West Texas. So this is ranch country, very different from Boston. Like, it's another night and day community, but their interest, right? So they're interested in embracing lifestyle medicine. I'll be the first to kind of share this message, and at least from an attending level. And so I'm curious, what for folks like myself, or maybe others who are in this position to share this message, what resources would you recommend that we could reach and utilize for that message and really make it impactful for that type of audience?
Yes, I would love for you to look at the LM 101 curriculum and look at the intro. You can pull out slides you like right from there. If you think you want to go maybe into a little more stress resiliency, then move over to the module for stress and pull out of the 150 slides there. I think you'll find one or two that you could utilize and pop into your presentation. So I would say you have 150 times 12. You could probably do that math quickly.
Yeah.
As a open free resource right now that you just can click on at the American College of Lifestyle Medicine. And for a grand rounds, you may want some of that research material that is shared, because the physicians will likely want that. Another opportunity to share is a CME from ACLM. You may have heard about this, the Essentials Bundle, which is currently free. And again, you just would go to ACLM, put in Essentials Bundle. This is from the White House Conference. I'm quite sure you've heard of this. And that's a great opportunity to learn some of the material in a CME course. I would share that if you're going to do a grand rounds, and I hear you about your community, we want to bring people in. So I like to talk about all the positive aspects of, say, movement. And I get into the increased dopamine, the increased serotonin. I'll get into the BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, because so many people are concerned about dementia, and then connect it to insulin levels and how we can become more insulin sensitive if we exercise. I try to, with the physicians, bring in pieces that will actually resonate with them as well as their patients. So when I was a resident in PM&R, if you know physical medicine and rehab, there's a whole part of it that does sports medicine. And so I was a field hiking lacrosse player in college, and I liked the sports, and I've always loved running and exercise. So we did this study back in 2000, most highly cited study that I've ever published, but you'll see why. We surveyed family physicians. I wonder if you were in there. No, you were still just a baby. This was in
No, you're only probably 2 years older than me, so.
So 2000, where you may also be in residency or so. So we surveyed family physicians and we asked them, do you exercise? Do you counsel on exercise? Do you do strength training? Do you counsel on strength training? Do you do aerobic training? Do you counsel on it? And have you read this one by chance? Do you know this data?
Maybe I know there was a survey of family physicians, but I didn't look at the author. I'm not sure if you were the author or not, but
Well, surprise, surprise.
Yeah.
Physicians that exercise counsel on it. If
Yeah.
you don't strength train and you're a physician, you don't counsel on strength training. If you do aerobic training and you're a physician, you counsel. So why I bring this up is when you are doing grand rounds, you have multiple opportunities. This is how I always view it. I'm saying to myself, these physicians at this point, 2023, they may know about lifestyle medicine. When I was doing this in 2012, 2014, even 2016, a lot of people never heard of it. But likely your people, well, I don't know where you are. I'm not sure. But so one, I'm introduced. Yeah, you're thinking no. Okay.
not in West Texas. I'm not there now. I'm in California, but that element, no, it's a new concept.
So fun. So I always
Yeah.
go, it's like, this is fun. So I'm going to tell them what it is. I'm going to tell them about the 6 pillars, but then I'm going to hook them in with the science. Because remember, you know this well, lifestyle medicine is evidence-based. We are research driven. I was telling you about the endothelial cells and the effect nitric oxide has on. I mean, we are molecular. We go to the molecule. We are understanding this at a metabolic level. So we share a little, like I said, BDNF. Many of them may not know that exercise increases BDNF. They may not. And that will inspire them, maybe. And then they share it. It inspires their patients. So find that thinking about, I'm going to share the research with you. And I'm thinking in my head, this may inspire you. And then hopefully it's going to inspire your patient. I'm thinking kind of 2 levels whenever I do a grand rounds. So talking about stress, we know that a lot of patients are stressed. Well, a lot of providers are stressed. So what does the research show works for this? And then I get 14 different options with the literature under each option. Because, you're giving grand rounds. They're expecting, and we have it, the evidence. So those are my thoughts. And I believe when you show the research, you will get buy-in. Then when you show the joy and the fun in this type of living, so yoga, paddleboard yoga, whatever you can do that resonates with them. I don't know, but something, right? Find something that's fun for them. And then you have this joy, and then talking about how we could use deep breathing, just that exhalation to turn on the parasympathetic and decrease the stress. Seeing that they have tools, simple tools that they could use today, right now, free. Your breath is free. Have it every day. And how do you use it? So hopefully that helps. Does that help you?
No, I think that's fabulous. And the other element that I've certainly seen work with discussions with physicians and things is your own experience. Either one, I mean, I've been healthy and active and myself. But the really fun stories are seeing doctors who were ill transform their lives with lifestyle and say, oh my goodness, they're the biggest advocates, or sharing patient stories. It's just amazing when you tell patients, like one of my patients, lost 350 pounds, and that was at the 3. She was 509 pounds the first time I ever met her. And it took her 4 years, but she lost 350 pounds, and strictly was through changing diet and movement, and then incorporating, the stress reduction and really looking at behaviors and being very adamant that she was going to change her life. Yeah. So those stories are, there's just those, that's like the normal, right? That's your everyday We're not a commercial where it's like, these are atypical. Like, no, this is actually typical, but they're still really fun. And I consider lifestyle medicine the antidote to burnout. It really is, because it's so phenomenal for the physician. But
Yeah, I love what you just said in so many ways. One, may I ask you to consider writing that up as a case study?
yeah, we could definitely do that. She'd love that. Yeah.
I think it would be so valuable. I did this with a patient, same thing. No, it's not the same thing. Same topic, but we
Yeah.
were just working on a BMI that put this patient in the overweight category, in this particular case,
Mm.
running through how lifestyle medicine could help someone who wanted to change and didn't. Her thing was she didn't want to buy a whole new wardrobe with her new job. At any rate, you can hear about it. It's a BMJ case report now. But what did we do? It's the same as what you did. Yours took 4 years and a lot more work. She had less weight to lose, but the process was the same: changing the way she ate, changing the way she moved, the way she managed stress, the way she slept. Same core lifestyle medicine principles, different perhaps intensity and duration, and again, different goal. But I would love to see that as a case study, actually.
It was really fascinating. Yeah. Cause I actually interviewed Nikki on the podcast, and what was really interesting. So I was working with Dr. Joel Furman at that time. I was his medical director in Florida, and we had it was another startup. It's like the startup thing. I just can't walk away from it, apparently. But for 6 months, and we had investors, and then they pulled out. That's why the clinic closed. But we had people come and stay with us for 4 and 6 weeks. And so she was literally patient number 1, January 2017. And what was interesting, she stayed with us for 4 weeks. She lost 50 pounds. And I never quite understood, because I've never been overweight. I understood there was emotional and taxing stress related to carrying around enormous amounts of weight. But she sat in her car as she was leaving, because we were all, excited for her. And she sat in her car and she buckled her seatbelt and she started crying. And I think it was that moment that it really clicked for me, the emotional impact, and just seeing what I took for granted and people take for granted on a daily basis: movement, buckling your seatbelt. These are safety, these are life issues, right? And I just found that phenomenal. That day just stuck with me. Like, it just, as hard as this may be sometimes to start a new business and make it available for everyone, just gotta keep going, Lori. But yeah, that's really fun stuff. But
That's an incredible story. You've done some really remarkable work, and I would love for you to write a book about your experience. But that's after the case study. Let's get a case study done, and then I'd love for you to write a book. But I do want to quickly touch on something very important you said, which is lifestyle medicine can help people with burnout. And interestingly, you say that because, well, I've been doing this since 2008, right? In various shapes and forms, looking at the group visits and the education. And what's happening now with group visits, guess what? Guess who are I have 3 groups: physicians.
Yeah. We certainly looked at doing this for physicians as well, because Mora, my current company, is based on, we do some one-on-ones, but it's group visits. And I wanted to call it, like, green group visits, called Heal the Healers, right? We just really want to heal those who are really providing all this care. And, we're certainly will be, as we create our business model, I think that will be a big piece. It's helping our, people who are helping everyone else, sacrificing. People don't understand the sacrifices that physicians, nurses, they hear about it and then they forget about it the next day, but they don't understand the day-to-day grind just to get the education. The cost. It's just they just don't understand, and that just really, they're not superhumans. And then patients get really short with doctors because they're not enough time. And it's just I just want to be the advocate for the doctors. It's really important. So
Yes, and I think you are, and you're providing other avenues. You're providing more compassionate, effective avenues for people to practice this lifestyle medicine. And your work has been groundbreaking. And I am really honored and delighted to have shared this time with you. And thank you so much for inviting me onto your podcast, Lori. I really, really appreciate it. It's really fun. As I say, I think a really great podcast would be to interview you.
You're very kind. But no, I know we went over our 45 minutes, but I feel like I could talk to you forever. But absolutely, thank you so much. And maybe if I'm in Boston, I can come say hi to you. I'll be there this summer and again in November. Yeah, absolutely love it. Oh, Boston's one of my favorite cities ever, other than the cold. You guys, I left Colorado because of the cold too, but but no, this is wonderful. Thank you again for all your work and everything, and continue to pioneer ways to, again, education and, taking on responsibilities. I mean, being president of the ACLM, it's a big job, and it's wonderful that, people like yourself are able to do that.
Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed that video. Before you go though, please hit the subscribe and alert buttons so you don't miss out on any of the amazing content we're working so hard to provide you. We upload a new episode of Health and More with Dr. Lori Marbas every Friday. Now, if you'd rather listen to the podcast, you can find us on all the major platforms such as iTunes, Google Play, SoundCloud, and even Spotify. If you're looking for amazing resources to help you start and sustain a plant-based diet, exercise, recipes, or anything wellness, we got you covered there too. Because at Mora, we actually provide physician-led support groups to help people live happier, healthier lives free of metabolic disease. Don't forget to check out our website at mora.com, and thanks again for watching.